17th century missionary activity in Asia, and the Americas grew strongly, put down roots, and developed its institutions, though it met with strong resistance in Japan in particular. At the same time, Christian colonization of some areas outside Europe succeeded, driven by economic as well as religious reasons. Christian traders were heavily involved in the Atlantic slave trade, which had the effect of transporting Africans into Christian communities. A land war between Christianity and Islam continued, in the form of the campaigns of the Habsburg Empire and Ottoman Empire in the Balkans. A turning point coming at Vienna in 1683, that Tsardom of Russia, where Orthodox Christianity was the established religion, expanded eastwards into Siberia and Central Asia, regions of Islamic and shamanistic beliefs, and also southwest into Ukraine, where the Uniate Eastern Catholic churches arose. There was a very large volume of Christian literature published, particularly controversial and millennial, but also historical and scholarly. Hagiography became more critical with the Bollandists, and ecclesiastical history became thoroughly developed and debated, with Catholic scholars such as Baronius and G. Mabillon, and Protestants such as David Blondel laying down the lines of scholarship. Christian art of the Baroque and music derived from church forms were striking and influential on lay artists using secular expression and themes. Poetry and drama often treated biblical and religious matter. For example, John Milton's Paradise Lost. Changing attitudes, Protestant and Catholic. At the beginning of the century, the First of England opposed the papal deposing power in a series of controversial works, and the assassination of Henry IV of France caused an intense focus on the theological doctrines concerned with tyrannicide. Both Henry and James, in different ways, pursued a peaceful policy of religious conciliation, aimed at eventually healing the breach caused by the Protestant Reformation. While progress along these lines seemed more possible, during the 12 Years' Truce, conflicts after 1620 changed the picture, and the situation of Western and Central Europe after the Peace of Westphalia left a more stable, but entrenched polarization of Protestant and Catholic territorial states with religious minorities. The religious conflicts in Catholic France over Jansenism and Paul Troil produced the controversial work Letters Provinciales by Blaise Pascal. In it he took aim at the prevailing climate of moral theology, a speciality of the Jesuit order, and the attitude of the Collège de Sorbonne. Pascal argued against the casuistry, at that time deployed in cases of conscience, particularly doctrines associated with probabilism. By the end of the 17th century, the Dictionnaire historique et critique by Pierre Bayle represented the current debates in the Republic of Letters, a largely secular network of scholars and savants who commented in detail on religious matters, as well as those of science. Proponents of wider religious toleration and a skeptical line on many traditional beliefs argued with increasing success for changes of attitude in many areas, including discrediting the false decretals and the legend of Pope Joan, magic and witchcraft, millennialism and extremes of anti-Catholic propaganda, and toleration of Jews in society. Polemicism and Irenicism, contention between Catholic and Protestant matters, gave rise to a substantial polemical literature, written both in Latin to appeal to international opinion among the educated, and in vernacular languages. In a climate where opinion was thought open to argument, the production of polemical literature was part of the role of prelates and other prominent churchmen, academics in universities, and seminarians in religious colleges. Institutions such as Chelsea College in London and Arras College in Paris were set up expressly to favour such writing. the major debates between Protestants and Catholics proving inconclusive, and theological issues within Protestantism being divisive. There was also a return to the Irenicism, the search for religious peace. David Parhaeus was a leading Reformed theologian who favored an approach based on reconciliation of views. Other leading figures, such as Marco Antonio de Dominis, Hugo Grotius, and John Dory, worked in this direction. Heresy and demonology. The last person to be executed by fire for a heresy in England was Edward Whiteman in 1612. The legislation relating to this penalty was in fact only changed in 1677, after which those convicted on a heresy charge would suffer at most excommunication. Accusations of heresy. Whether the revival of late antique debates, such as those over Pelagianism and Arianism, or more recent views such as Socinianism in theology and Copernicanism in natural philosophy, continue to play an important part in intellectual life. At the same time, as the judicial pursuit of heresy became less severe, interest in demonology was intense in many European countries. The skeptical arguments against the existence of witchcraft and demonic possession were still contested into the 1680s by theologians. The Gangrena by Thomas Edwards used a framework equating heresy and possession to draw attention to the variety of radical Protestant views current in the 1640s. In 1610, Galileo Galilei published his Sidereus Nuncius, describing observations that he had made with the new telescope. These and other discoveries exposed difficulties with the understanding of the heavens current since antiquity, and raised interest in teachings such as the heliocentric theory of Copernicus. In reaction, scholars such as Cosimo Boscoglia maintained that the motion of the earth and immobility of the sun were heretical, as they contradicted some accounts given in the Bible as understood at that time. Galileo's part in the controversies over theology, astronomy and philosophy culminated in his trial and sentencing in 1633 on a suspicion of heresy. The Galileo affair, the process by which Galileo came into conflict with the Roman Catholic Church over his support of Copernican astronomy, has often been considered a defining moment in the history of the relationship between religion and science. The Protestant lands at the beginning of the 17th century were concentrated in Northern Europe, with territories in Germany, Scandinavia, England, Scotland, and areas of France, the Low Countries, Switzerland, Kingdom of Hungary, and Poland. Heavy fighting. In some cases, a continuation of the religious conflicts of the previous centuries was seen, particularly in the Low Countries and the electorate of the Palatinate, which saw the outbreak of the 30 Years' War. In Ireland, there was a concerted attempt to create plantations of Protestant settlers in what was a predominantly Catholic country, and fighting with a religious dimension was serious in the 1640s and 1680s. In France, the settlement proposed by the Edict of Nantes was whittled away to the disadvantage of the Huguenot population, and the edict was revoked in 1685. Protestant Europe was largely divided into Lutheran and Reformed, Calvinist areas, with the Church of England maintaining a separate position. Efforts to unify Lutherans and Calvinists had little success, and the ecumenical ambition to overcome the schism of the Protestant Reformation remained almost entirely theoretical. The Church of England under William Laud made serious approaches to figures in the Orthodox Church, looking for common ground. Within Calvinism, an important split occurred. with the rise of Arminianism. The Synod of Dort of 1618-19 was a national gathering, but with international repercussions, as the teaching of Arminius was firmly rejected as a meeting to which Protestant theologians from outside the Netherlands were invited. The Westminster Assembly of the 1640s was another major council, dealing with Reformed theology, and some of its works continue to be important to Protestant denominations. In the 1640s, England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland underwent religious strife, comparable to that which its neighbours had suffered some generations before. The rancour associated with these wars is partly attributed to the nature of the Puritan movement, a description of which found to be unsatisfactory by many historians. In its early stages, the Puritan movement, late 16th, 17th centuries, stood for reform in the Church of England within the Calvinist tradition, aiming to make the Church of England resemble more closely the Protestant churches of Europe, especially Geneva. The Puritans refused to endorse completely all of the ritual directions and formulas of the Book of Common Prayer, the imposition of its liturgical order by legal force, and inspection sharpened Puritanism into a definite opposition movement. The English Civil War was a series of armed conflicts and political machinations between parliamentarians and royalists. The first 1642-46 and second 1648-49 civil wars pitted the supporters of King Charles I against the supporters of the Long Parliament, while the Third War 1649-51 saw fighting between supporters of King Charles II and supporters of the Rump Parliament. The wars ended with the parliamentary victory at the Battle of Worcester on the 3rd of September 1651. The war led to the trial and execution of Charles I, the exile of his son, Charles II, and replacement of English monarchy with first the Commonwealth of England 1649-53, and then with a protectorate 1653-59 under Oliver Cromwell's personal rule. In Ireland, military victory for the parliamentarian forces established a Protestant ascendancy. After coming to political power as a result of the First English Civil War, the Puritan clergy had an opportunity to set up a national church along Presbyterian lines. For reasons that were also largely political, they failed to do so effectively. After the English Restoration of 1660, the Church of England was purged within a few years of its Puritan elements. The successors of the Puritans, in terms of their beliefs, are referred to as dissenters and nonconformists, and included those who formed various Reformed denominations. Puritan emigration. Further information. History of the Puritans in North America. Emigration to North America of Protestants in what became New England was led by a group of Puritan separatists based in the Netherlands, the Pilgrims. Establishing a colony at Plymouth in 1620, they received a charter from the King of England. This successful, though initially quite difficult, colony marked the beginning of the Protestant presence in America. The earlier French, Spanish, and Portuguese settlements were Catholic. Unlike the Spanish or French, the English colonists made little initial effort to evangelize the native peoples. Devotions to Mary. Pope Paul V and Gregory XV ruled in 1617 and 1622 that it was invalid to say that Mary was conceived non-immaculate. Alexander VII declared in 1661 that the soul of Mary was free from original sin. Popular Marian piety was even more colourful, and varied than ever before, and included numerous Marian pilgrimages, Marian salve devotions, new Marian litanies, Marian theatre plays, Marian hymns, Marian processions, Marian fraternities, today mostly defunct, had millions of members. Pope Innocent XI with the latter part of the 17th century. Pope Innocent XI viewed the increasing Turkish attacks against Europe, which were supported by France, as the major threat for the Church. He built a Polish-Austrian coalition for the Turkish defeat at Vienna in 1683. Scholars have called him a saintly pope because he reformed abuses by the Church, including simony, nepotism, and the lavish papal expenditures that had caused him to inherit a papal debt of 50 million scudi. By eliminating certain honorary posts and introducing new fiscal policies, Innocent XI was able to regain control of the Church's finances. In 1685, Gallicanus King Louis XIV of France issued the revocation of the Edict of Nantes, ending a century of religious toleration. France forced Catholic theologians to support conciliarism and deny papal infallibility. The king threatened Pope Innocent XI with a Catholic ecumenical council and the military takeover of the papal state. The absolute French state used Gallicanism to gain control of virtually all major church appointments, as well as many of the Church's properties. The expansion of the Catholic Portuguese Empire and Spanish Empire, with a significant role played by the Roman Catholic Church, led to a Christianization of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, such as the Aztecs and Incas. Later waves of colonial expansion, such as the struggle for India by the Dutch, England, France, Germany, Russia, and Spanish, led to Christianization beyond Asia, such as Philippines,